Back, everybody. Today we're going to be doing a quick first round recap with grades for each pick. Keep in mind, I'll be factoring any trades up, down. Not only am I grading the player to team fit, but the process of how that player got on that team. If you've been liking the draft content, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Stick around for plenty more draft content for this season and for next season. Let's get it started here with Fernando Mendoza. I think it's pretty much a solid B plus. I don't think he's the highest end first overall pick that we've seen. I kind of view him in a similar tier as like Cam Ward or similar to a Cam Ward from last year, similar to, I'm blanking on the quarterbacks from 3 years ago. Let's restart that shit. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be doing a first round grades video, first round recap of everything that happened last night. Pretty self-explanatory. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video. It really helps me out and it's free. So, easy peasy. Starting off with Fernando Mendoza, I think it's a solid B plus, I would say. I like Fernando Mendoza. I think he's got good size. I think he's got good processing ability. He's not the best first overall quarterback taken in a while. I kind of view him in a similar bucket with, Cam Ward from last year and, maybe Michael Penix from the year before. That caliber of player. Still worth the first overall pick in a weaker quarterback class. That's why it's not a slam dunk. He's certainly not on the Caleb Williams, Drake May level of talent. But I still think well worth the first overall pick, and I think there's a really solid chance that he is a above average starting quarterback for years to come. So B plus for Mendoza. David Bailey, I think I'm gonna go with a C plus. He's not a bad player by any means. I think I had him 7th overall on my big board. My biggest issue with this selection is they had Ruben Bain available and they had Arvell Reese available. Either of those two players I think would have been better selections than David Bailey. I think both play the run better than David Bailey does. I think Arvell Reese has way more upside than David Bailey does. Bailey's still a really solid player. He's got a really good first step, really good athleticism. I think he has the ability to develop a really nice pass rush tool belt. It's not necessarily that I dislike David Bailey. It's just I'd rather have Reese or Bain at 2 there, honestly. Pick number 3, Jeremiah Love. I'm going to give this a D plus. Again, not anything to do with the player. I think Jeremiah Love is phenomenal, but I think we've seen over the past couple of years that teams taking a running back when their roster sucks ass isn't necessarily the recipe for success. We saw it just last year with an equally talented running back prospect in Ashton Jeanty. Went to the Raiders, whose offensive line was bad, quarterback play was bad, and he got one good game, really. And it's already a room that has James Conner, that they just signed Tyler Algier, still has Trey Benson in it. It's not a dire need, and their offensive line is garbage. It feels like a luxury pick in a non-luxury situation. So I will stick with a D plus. I still think Jeremiah Love is going to be awesome, but it might take a few years for that team to build up the roster around him to allow him to succeed. Carnell Tate here at 4. I was a little shocked. that he went fourth, not because I don't think he's a good player, but I didn't see Tennessee taking wide receiver. I'll roll with a B plus. He was wide receiver 2 and player 13 for me in this class. Really good body control, incredible hands, the way he can track the ball over his shoulder, contort his body, control his body in the air. I think he's just an athlete that is always under control with what he is doing. I know a lot of people say his upside is only a high end 2. I think he could be a pretty solid number 1 receiver. I really do. I know his testing numbers weren't great, but his play speed's good. I think people underrate his after the catch ability. They act like it's non-existent. Certainly not his strong suit, but it's there. He is capable of making plays and making you miss. And we obviously don't question his ability before the catch. He's phenomenal. So B plus there. This is a tough one because Arvell Reese was the 4th player in this class. I really love Arvell Reese. I just don't understand how the Giants plan to make this fit. I get what they said in their post-game press conference where they said he was the best player on their board, so you get a chance to pick your best player at 5. I get it. But they have Thibodeaux, and they have Burns, and they have Reese now, and they have the kid out of Penn State from last year that I'm blanking on. Oh, geez. What's that dude's name? He's really good. Completely blanking on his name. Embarrassing on my part, but... So I don't know how they're going to plan to deploy him. I mean, maybe they play him next to Tremaine Edmonds as a true linebacker until they're able to deal Thibodeaux or until Burns' contract runs out. And you kind of slowly convert him to an edge player, but I was shocked by this pick. If I had to give it a grade, I'd probably say B plus because it's I'm never gonna overly put a team down for getting a really good player into their organization. I just the fit and how he gets on the field, I'm not too sure how that's gonna play out, especially year 1 here. The Kansas City Chiefs at number 6, moving up with the Browns to select Mansour Delane. I believe they gave up a 3rd round pick to get him to move up from 9 to 6. I'm going to give this a B. This is a tough one for me. I find myself a smidge lower on Delane than what consensus was. I just think he's a little old, kind of a late breakout, and he's a little small for my liking. I think he's just a smidge on the small side. So I think I had him in the mid to late teens. I know a lot of people kind of have him bordering that top 10 selection. So it's a little early for me, especially with the trade up, giving up a 3rd round pick to get him. But I still think he fills a need that you have. Obviously, they lost McDuffie, and Watson this offseason. I still think he's a hell of a player. I think easily is going to be a really good high-end cornerback 1 in the league. So I don't hate it. That's why I'm giving it a B, but I just was a smidge lower on Delane than most. Next, we got Sonny Styles to the Commanders. I'm going to give this an A. I know people like to crap on linebacker as a position, but I think Sonny Styles is everything you want in a modern-day linebacker. He's got the size that most of these linebackers lack these days. I mean, you look at the size of most of these guys, it's 6'1", 6'2", 230 pounds. I mean, he's a solid 6'5", 245. Ran a 4.46, elite broad jump, elite vertical jump. Just a freakish athlete for his size. And his run defense is teach tape. I mean, if you watch the Indiana game, he was just phenomenal. Like, absolutely phenomenal at taking on blockers, shedding, rerouting lanes for the running back, closing lanes. His closing speed in the passing game from sideline to sideline is ridiculous. He's freakish. He sees the game well. He has the mind for it. So not only is he physically fast, but he can play fast because he's processing it fast. And their defense was not good. They needed, a player to try to tie it together. They made some nice signings in the offseason, and I think Sonny Styles is a nice kind of glue piece to that defense. So I'm going to give it an A. That's what it's going to be. Jordan Tyson at number 8. I'm going to give this another A. I've kind of come full circle on Tyson. He was wide receiver 1 for me. I kind of got turned off by some of the injury things, but as we get closer to the draft and we got more intel that teams didn't view it as much of a concern, he ended up being wide receiver 1 for me again. His skill set's just phenomenal. He's so sudden, so quick. He consistently plays outside of his frame. He attacks the point, the catch point so aggressively. He's just so sudden in his routes. He's a phenomenal player. And if there weren't any injury concerns, I think there's a chance he could have gone higher potentially. But I think it's an A pick, slam dunk. Pair him with Chris Olave. Now you're Tyler Shuck. You're kind of cooking. You got a really good receiver core there. Pick 9, Spencer Fano. I'm going to give this another A. We're on a stretch of good picks here. I think trading back from 6 to 9, picking up an extra third-round pick is a great process. Picking the player you would have picked at 6 anyway. I personally liked Marino a smidge higher, but it was so close that I'm not going to ding him for it. And here's the thing is their offensive line as a whole isn't good. So you could start him off at tackle, and if the short arms become a problem, you could move him into guard. It's not like you've got all pro level guards who you just can't, take off the field. So I think whether it's at tackle, at guard, at center, I think Fano will find a way to impact this offensive line that so desperately needs help. So I'm going to give it an A. Francis Mauigoa is going to be another A. They're going to draft him to play guard because they still have... I always get Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas mixed up. For some reason, I cannot keep their names straight on which one is garbage and which one is really good. They still have one of those two, who is an elite tackle. They just signed Jermaine Illuminor to a deal to continue to play tackle for them. I know Jermaine Illuminor is a little older, so potentially long-term, Mauigoa could move out to tackle. But he has made it clear himself he just wants to play. With 5 positions, give me one of them, I'll be great at it. And I think he will be a really good guard for them with the potential to eventually kick out to tackle if need be. Once again, giving it an A pick. Amazing selection. Beef up the interior of that line. Keelan Downs at 11 to the Cowboys. I'm going to give it an A+. One of the top 3 players in this draft class for me. Just a phenomenal player. He can play anywhere in that secondary. He can play deep safety. He can play box safety. He can play slot corner. He's so smart and he reads the game so well. He's often quicker to the spot than college receivers and college quarterbacks were. He was so good at taking away throws over the middle of the field and breaking up passes, forcing the quarterback out of his initial read in the middle. He's not the flashiest athlete. He's not the biggest athlete, but he just is always in the right spot at the right time. He's a good tackler. He's a phenomenal player. A+. To get him at 11 is fantastic. Caden Proctor to the Dolphins. I'm going to go with a B. I think it fits a position of need, whether they have him at tackle or guard. My guess is he is going to play guard because that is where they struggled much more than at tackle last year. Their guards were awful. So if that is the case, I would have rather have had Vega Ioane. Like I said, I don't think Proctor's bad. I think Proctor's worth a first-round pick. I think it's at a position of need. It's just, if he's going to play guard, I would have rather had Ioane. If they're going to have him play tackle, I would have rather had Miller or Ihanacho or Freeling or Lomu. So it's going to get, I'm going to change it. It's going to get a B minus. Just because I like the player still. I don't think he's a bad player whatsoever. It's a position of need. I just would much rather have had any of the other offensive linemen available. Ty Simpson, I'm going to give this a D. I don't get it. You are in a, go for it all in season with Matt Stafford. You traded your other pick for Trent McDuffie. Go get yourself Makai Lemon. Go get yourself a guy who can impact the game this year. I know you want to have your cake and eat it too, but the window is closing, and you had a chance. You had a luxury pick that you were not supposed to have to go get a top 10, top 15 player in this class. Instead, you reach on a quarterback that, and if everything goes right this season, isn't going to play a bit. He shouldn't help you at all this season. I don't get it. I would have understood it if they had kept 28, 29, whatever it ended up being, and taking him there. That would have made sense. But here at 13, I don't get it whatsoever. Vega Wane 14 to the Ravens. I'm gonna give this an A+. I've said enough on this channel. He's a plug and play starter, both phases of the game, above average at everything. They needed interior help, so it's a perfect fit. I don't need to say much more. A+. Ruben Bain, again, A+. He was my third-rated player in this class. I know there's concerns about his arm length. I know there's the off-the-field concerns about the car incident that happened a few years ago. I don't care. I didn't see any tape suggesting that his arm length affected him negatively. He's so violent in both phases of the game. And Tampa needed pass rush. They needed pass rush bad, and they got the best pass rusher in the game at pick 15. Pick 16 with the New York Jets taking Kenyon Sadiq. I'm going to give this a B-, man. I'm not as high on Kenyon Sadiq as consensus seems to be. I view him more as a back end of the first round, early second round kind of guy. And actually, no, I'm going to change this. This is going to be a C+. I don't think it deserves a B-. You drafted Mason Taylor last year. You have the chance to draft Makai Lemon to pair with Garrett Wilson, who I think is a much significantly better player than Kenyon Sadiq. And you pass on it. And I know you could play two tight ends. I know 12 personnel's becoming a lot more popular, but a player that I view at a much less impact than Makai Lemon, and at a position my view as much less impactful. I'm just not the biggest fan. I still think he's a really good player. That's what's keeping it from being a truly bad grade. But we're going to stick with a C+. I just think it could have been better. I just didn't get it. Pick 17, Blake Miller to the Lions. I'm going to give this an A. I think he's well worth the 17th pick. Polished, experienced tackle. Really only struggles with power, which you can put on a little bit of weight. He's got a good frame. I think he's so technical with his hands, with his feet, always in sync, always striking properly. Not the biggest upside guy out of these tackles that are left, but really high floor. I think he could be a solid tackle, and they need a tackle bad. So I think I said A or A-. I don't remember. Caleb Banks at 18. I'm gonna roll with a B. I was a little lower on Caleb Banks, plus all of his injury stuff kind of turned me off to him towards the end. He's a physical freak, and it's a position they need. I think, simply put, I'm just lower on Caleb Banks than most, so I'm gonna roll with a B there. Monroe Freeling at 19. I'll go B+. Again, I probably would have preferred Ihanacho or Caleb Lomu to Monroe Freeling. But with the injury to Ike Ekwonu, they needed a tackle. And I don't think it's a bad pick. I think he's still worth the 19th overall selection. Just a few guys I liked better than him, which is why it ends up being a B+. Makai Lemon, I'm going to give an A+. This is pretty self-explanatory. Had him as my 14th player, so great value at a position of need. They're going to trade A.J. Brown. So you're going from a pairing of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to Devontae Smith and Makai Lemon. I don't think the fit is necessarily amazing because Makai Lemon does a lot of his work over the middle of the field. That's kind of where he makes his money. And Jalen Hurts just doesn't throw over the middle of the field. Now, maybe with this addition, they'll make an emphasis to, and they'll work on that. But I still think it's an A+. Makai Lemon is there at 20. You have to pick him. Slam dunk pick. Max Iheanacho at 21. I will give A-. I think the Steelers really need a tackle. Broderick Jones is not very good, and he is dealing with neck injuries, which can be very wishy-washy on timeline for coming back to playing. And like I said, I had Iheanacho ahead of Proctor and ahead of Freeling. I liked Blake Miller a little better than Iheanacho. Really athletic, moves really well for his size. All the upside in the world. I think he's the biggest upside prospect for these tackles in this class. Only started playing football like a few years ago, like 4 years ago or something ridiculous like that. So it's definitely a bit of a project, but I don't think he's as far. I think he's farther along than people are willing to admit. So A- there for Iheanacho. 22, Keem Mesidor. I'm going to give an A. He was right behind Bailey as edge 4 in this class for me. I think very similarly to his teammate in Ruben Bain, just super violent in both phases of the game, man. I know he's a bit older, but he was taken to a team that is win now, ready to go, so that shouldn't be an issue. I just think he's phenomenal. Both phases, brings up violence and edge, and absolutely a hardball kind of a guy. Malachi Lawrence at 23. I'm going to give this a B. I wasn't quite as high on Malachi Lawrence. I don't think he's a super fluid athlete. I think it's in there. I think the ability to become a fluid athlete is there. He just needs to unlock it. He needs to become smoother, more fluid on the field and less, herky-jerky, hitchy. But he's got the size. He's got the length. And he has all the tools to be a phenomenal pass rusher. He just needs to tap into it and really kind of blossom into a star pass rusher. Pick 24, Casey Concepcion. I don't know. I gave a B. Yeah, B. Gave a B for Lawrence. Casey Concepcion, I'm going to give a C+. This is another combination of I think he's a little redundant with Jerry Jeudy. I think both of their deficiencies line up. Both of their skill sets overlap a decent amount. And I was just lower on Concepcion. Personally, I had Omar Cooper higher. I had Skylar Bell higher. I had Denzel Boston. I also had Elijah Surratt higher. I don't think he's a bad selection. It's a tad high. And the overlap with Jeudy when there were other options that were better and gave you a different skill set. I don't love it. They still needed a receiver, so I still think it's a need. That is not the one I would have went with. Dylan Thieneman at 25 to the Bears. I'm going to give this an A. I think he fell a little bit more than people were anticipating. I had him, I think, is the 21st best player in this class. I mean, talk about just a true free safety. You're not going to ask him to really play in a slot too often. You're not going to ask him to man up big tight ends. You're not going to ask him to do that. But you're going to put him in the back. You're going to put him at free safety. You're going to let him use his range and his instincts and his intellect to just, play the whole field and take away plays over the top. Super smart, super athletic, at a position of need. I will, like I said, I'll go with an A here. The Texans, I'm gonna go with a C plus. I like Keelan Rutledge. He was a top 50 player for me. I think he just snuck in the back of the top 50. So it's definitely a tad high, and the fact that you traded up for him, it's a huge position of need, which is why I'm not going to kill it too bad. They needed offensive line. It's been bad for a couple of years now. I just don't love the process of trading up for a guy who I had at around 50, taking him almost 25 spots higher. I don't love it, especially when maybe you could have gotten one at 38, like one of Basantis, Rutledge, and not Davis, and Pregnon probably would have been there at 38, or at least you could trade up from 38 to get him. I don't know. So that's a C plus for me. Chris Johnson, they needed a corner really badly. I'm shocked he went over Colton Hood. I like Chris Johnson a good amount. I personally had him over Colton Hood. I think he's got really good size. He's a really smart player, especially in zone. And I think the Combine did a lot for his testing numbers. I thought people really thought he was slow. And he kind of shut that all down. And they needed it bad. Their cornerback room was terrible. Go look at the depth chart. It's embarrassing. So I'm going to give that a B plus. Caleb Lomu to the Patriots. This is an A plus for me. Caleb Lomu was tackle 3 for me in this class. I think he's super athletic, has a ton of upside. He's still kind of raw, but at the same time, he's had a lot of snaps, so he has experience, but he's younger, and there's so plenty of room to grow. Super athletic, gives you flexibility on the offensive line to flip Will Campbell inside. Their other tackle, Morgan Moses, is really old, so you could flip him over to the right side of the line. Either or, I think Lomu is fantastic. A plus pick. Peter Woods for the Chiefs. I'm going to go with a B. I'm going to go with a B plus. Again, fits a position of need. Their defensive line was atrocious last year. There's a few D tackles I would have preferred over Peter Woods just because I get scared with the size of guys like that. It's super outlierish, and I'm typically not a big fan. But I don't think it's a crazy reach. It's at a position of need and a player with a very specific skill set. So I could see them, buying into what he brings to the table as far as a pass rusher. I think there's a little bit of overlap with Omar Norman-Lott. We'll see how that plays out here this season with Kansas City. Pick 30, the Jets, Omar Cooper Jr. I'm going to give this an A+. Again, I had him rated in the low 20s. Just a rack demon. You get the ball in his hands, and he's going to be able to do phenomenal things with it. Super dense, able to shake off tacklers, lighter cornerbacks. You really have to lay into him to get him down. And he's good before the catch. Pairing him with Garrett Wilson, I think you've finally putting together a decent receiver room. Keldrick Falk at 31. I'll give it a B+. Again, a little bit of a reach. I'm going to give it a B. It's a little bit of a reach, and there's also a decent amount of edge rushers I'd rather have. Akis, Parker, Howell, Zion Young. He's just raw. He's really raw. He's really raw. He's got good, he's got good upside because of his athleticism for his size. But I think they were talking about it on the broadcast last night. Just didn't flash it very often. Didn't flash the conversion from speed to power, the technician's ability to put out pass rush moves. So he's a big, ball of clay, and we'll see if Saleh can mold him into a successful pass rusher. But I'll roll with a B for now. Jadarian Price, this has been something I've been mocking for a while now. Jadarian Price sneaking into the back end of the first round. I'm going to give it an A. I think he's well worth the pick. I think he's got good explosiveness, good, agility. He's not super fast, but he's quick, he's twitchy. I think he provides something in the passing game that you're looking for to replace Kenneth Walker. It was a position of need, a player worth the spot. It's a luxury pick, but they have a really good roster, so they can afford a luxury pick. So I think it's I think it was a pretty solid pick there at 32. That's going to do it for me today. Let me know what you guys think of any grades I got down below. Any players you thought should have gone in the first round. Good picks, bad picks. Just let me know.